Another lackluster performance by the Cubs at the plate. Another great start by the Cubs starting pitching, and the bullpen was solid. We're going to talk about what the Cubs are going to have to do to get some offense. Kyle Tucker, still day-to-day. Seiya Suzuki, struggling. Pete Crow-Armstrong leaves the game, and more right here on the Cubs Baseball channel. Make sure that you guys are part of our AveD site. The QR code's right there. We're going to give away playoff tickets and more, and we'll talk about that on the show as well. But thank you for being here, and let's get the show started. What do you say, everybody? Mick Gillespie, Cubs Baseball channel. Great to see you guys today, and it's awesome to have Naren Desai jumping on the show to talk about the Cubs. What's up, dude? Let me go ahead and say this. It feels like, and as I talk about Kyle Tucker being day-to-day, that this Cubs offense is so lackluster. Like, as good as it was at the beginning of the year is as bad as it is right now. Big explosion on Friday, Saturday, 1 run, and that was it.
Yeah, I mean, we had such a blessed time those first 75 games up to like mid-June. And that regression is hard, and it's been a little disappointing, and it's just so weird. You can't predict baseball. Usually you think it would be the other way around, right? With these younger guys, you'd think that they would struggle in the beginning with these tougher schedule, and then they maybe would hit their stride later. But yeah, we had such a dynamite offense to start, and it's just been pretty much a Jekyll and Hyde. Just you don't know what you're going to get each day. And I don't think scoring 11 runs is that impressive against the Nationals, and I think it's pretty pathetic scoring 1 today, given we're in a playoff chase.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. And let me start with Kyle Tucker, because so much of what the Cubs do really circle around his ability to be in the lineup, and he's dealing with a calf injury. It's one of those injuries where every day they show up and they're like, well, we're not sure. He left the game early, then they gave him the next day off, and then there was an off day, and then he came to the park and he couldn't play, and then he's not in the lineup again. And it's like, I guess they just don't want to put him on the IL. But to me, I just don't understand what their reluctance is to go out there and put him on the IL, let him get rested, and bring up Owen Casey and just get out of the way. Owen Casey was really doing well, and I just don't understand. It feels like David Ross over again, where it's like they're so concerned about young players not being able to contribute. But the problem to me is you don't got Tucker. Willie Castro is not your right fielder. And and now you got, and who knows, we'll talk about PCA in a second, but I don't understand why they just won't let the guy play a little bit.
Yeah, you can just see they don't have confidence. They don't have confidence in the risk. They, obviously the player has to agree to go on the IL. So I'm sure there's some pushback on his side. But yeah, it just sounds like they don't feel good. I mean, even Mo Baller's raking, and Jonathan Long's having a good year down there. And sometimes you think, against some of these inferior teams, like these guys want to play so bad and show what they can do that that would kind of spark the dugout and the lineup. But yeah, they're just going with the guys that got them there, and they're good players, and they're going to get out of it, and they're going to win it. We're going to sink or swim with them, with or without them. So yeah, it just seems like that's the mentality. I don't get it. I could see this team's a little slow. So to me, that's where I'm surprised, but this is how they're running it. I don't see them changing their stripes as they go down the stretch. I think you're going to see maybe a little rest for some of these pitchers once it's all locked in. But, if they would have won like 5 or 6 out of 6 or 7, with 1 loss, then they could really kind of stretch out, the off days for Horton and Boyd and these guys for October. But, they're going to be, looks like they're just going to have to fight it through until the end to lock down the top wildcard spot.
What do you think? And I get that too. What do you think the Cubs offense is going to look like by the time the playoffs come, right? I mean, and let's go kind of change gears here. Seiya Suzuki, so good at the beginning of the year. We had a lot of fun watching the Suzuki versus Hollywood, Pete, back and forth. Now none of those guys are hitting home runs. It's been like, feels like forever on like, the late 20s for Hollywood to get to 30 home runs or PCA or whatever you want to call them, Pete Crow Armstrong. Seiya's been in this mighty slump, and you and I were kind of texting about this during the game. I mean, what's it going to take for him to get out of it and give people an idea how bad it is right now for him?
It's pretty bad. I mean, I just pulled up the splits post All-Star game. He had that one homer, I think that first game after the All-Star break against Boston, and he's been just ice cold since then. Something like, under 200 batting average, 571 OPS. And the thing like with that is he bats in the middle of the order, right? So when you have a black hole in the middle of the order, and Tucker obviously went into a slump, and Bush hasn't been as hot, and PCA has been as hot. I mean, that's where I think it's weird. It's why don't we try a few different things? Like give Seiya, always seems to just wear down. He hasn't put together a full season. He's oblique, and then he comes back a little rusty, and then gets hot, and then he's kind of had that. This is the fourth year, so it's not like this is the trend. And he was really good. I mean, when he was hitting homers in May and June, I mean, you could just see this lineup was so much more potent, in terms of putting up big numbers. And then when you're up 5-1, it's easier to score runs after that. When you're only have 1 or 2 runs, everyone plays a little tighter. It's just nature of the momentum of a game, and also the pitchers you face, right? Because you're not facing their best guys out of the bullpen. But yeah, to me, like I think we're just kind of like rolling out the lineup. It's like rolling dice, and see who bats. I mean, today like Nico's batting 5th, and then Carson Kelly's batting 6th. I mean, Nico, I love Nico, but he's not a number 5 hitter. So it just seems like, and then like Shaw, like we can't move him out of the 9th spot. He's kind of loving off a little bit the last few weeks, but I don't think he's that fragile. If you bat him 7th, all of a sudden he's going to change. These guys are all want to be great players. I mean, you're not going to bat 9th forever. So yeah, just like, it's one of those things like would Seiya benefit from 3 days off? And then, you give Casey and Mo Baller a chance, and, we'd roll in these 40-year-old guys thinking that, they've got something, they're obviously very experienced. And then I actually like them in a playoff game, just having their experience against a tough pitcher. But this is a grind, and sometimes you need some youthful energy.
196 batting average since the All-Star break for Seiya Suzuki, with only 2 home runs and 12 runs batted in. And that's crazy. And like it's just, wow. Like
you thought the DH would help him, would keep him fresher. And it's you only got to do is hit, it's like, come on.
Well, when they had Owen Casey, they could have platooned those guys, one right, one left. They didn't do that. And you and I were kind of like talking about these lineups, and they just don't feel like, they feel like like when you would play like the baseball video game growing up against the computer, and they were like the computer, you could beat the computer every time, and you'd be like your lineup, and it'd be like the exact lineup that the Cubs had or whatever your team was, right? You put the speed at the top, your run producers like in the 3-4 spot, your basher in like the 5 or 6 hole, your weak hitting shortstop 9th, or whatever, catcher 9th, whatever. It feels like these lineups every day, like some analytics guy put them together. They don't even look real to me sometimes.
I mean, yeah, today, I mean, like, Bush and Happ, and then obviously Seiya's in the 3 spot with his slump. It's like, man, try something different. Like PC had that good game yesterday, and like, hitting singles. It's like, maybe try him somewhere different. And Bush, I don't know. I mean, lineups don't matter technically because there's no pitcher. So once you get through the first couple innings, I mean, they're just, your first or second at bat. But sometimes it's just about, maybe giving a guy that, just a different look, maybe get a little excited, be batting first or second. I don't think it makes that big a deal, but yeah, I didn't love that lineup today. At least, they're not trying to, bring Dansby up because he had homer yesterday. That would have been silly.
Yeah, I do think they matter. Like, I just think that this age of baseball they've decided that the lineup doesn't matter. I still want to have Juan Pierre leading off, right? I still want to have like Rhino batting second or third and the Hawk batting third or fourth. I still want like my run producers to be behind the guys that get on base. Like I know I might be old school. When I see Schwartz leading off for the Phillies, and it's like, he's not very fast. He hits a bunch of home runs, but I'd rather those home runs come with men on base. It's like, well, what about, but those guys at the bottom of the lineup get out a lot too. So it's not like they're on base all the time.
They're slower usually.
Yeah, right. I don't know. I'm just not buying into it, but I see some of these lineups and it's like, some of it's got to be who's just swinging the bat good, who's seeing the ball. Just because Matt Shaw's a rookie doesn't mean that he's got to bat ninth to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I don't think that, I think Shaw's proven himself that, he's got the capability to bat a little higher in the lineup. It's really just about getting more at bats and maybe just the sequencing of things out in terms of like if you have, Nico Happ, Nico Happ and maybe, another hot bat, like back to back to back, then, maybe they can string more hits together potentially, or, just, easing into a game a little bit.
Right.
Battle a little lower. You bat in the second or third inning instead of the first inning, and maybe that could help with their just their mental approach of a long game. Just the long season, just wearing them down. So I don't know. I don't know if that matters or not. I know these guys all want to play. These guys all want to perform. But yeah, today, they're going up against an inferior team. They just got to find a way to score. I mean, and someone's got to come up with a big hit. And sometimes, I wonder,
but they haven't come up with big hits in a lot of games lately.
Do they, with two outs, nobody on? I mean, you're down by one. Do they signal in and be like, hey, go swing for the downs on this one? We need one run. We're not going to string together 3 singles with 2 outs. Don't play for the walk. Try to hit a homer.
I feel like with Happ, every time he's up, he's trying to walk. Good, and he's so hot and cold. But I want to talk about him in a second.
Sometimes you see them, take a walk, and it's like, dude, you gotta murder that pitch.
Yeah, right. Like instead of, no. Well, this guy got hurt, fouling a ball off of his kneecap, got on base, and then got the second and left the game. We'll find out what that means. Could just be a bruise. But I mean, when the Cubs were humming offensively, they were getting a lot of production from Kyle Tucker, Seiya Suzuki, and Hollywood Pete Crow Armstrong. They're not getting a whole lot from any of these guys right now. And it shows you how important Tucker is, because when he got hurt and went, south, everybody followed him. You know what I mean? Like all of a sudden it was like everybody couldn't hit. And I really think that shows the importance that he has in the lineup. And if Kevin Alcantara starts playing center field, you're going to lose a lot. Yeah, I don't think you guys realize how much you're going to lose defensively. Pete's the best defensive outfielder in baseball, but you won't realize it until you see it. Now, the guy can play. Look, I'm not saying that he's not going to be able to go out there and be serviceable or be good, but he's just not excellent. And there's a lot of balls that get caught. It's like the Cubs score 1 run, but they don't give up a whole lot either. And it's partly because Pete Crow Armstrong is just a patroller out in the outfield.
Yeah, his range is, just unmatched, right now in Major League Baseball in terms of, the ground he covers. And then also you can play shallow and just, so much you can do. I mean, I definitely don't think that anybody could replace him out there. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be, they got to get healthy and get wins so they can just kind of coast and kind of line everything up for this first series. I mean, I don't know. We were talking on text, this new format, just kind of, I mean, obviously, other teams are having issues too. I mean, the Padres are, they sold out at the deadline and they're struggling. They're losing games. They're getting shut up by the Rockies. The Mets are, up and down, and they've got a ton more payroll than we do. So we're not the only teams going through this, but yeah, this new format, it's kind of just everything's lined up for that best of 3 and then see what happens. And I don't really think the team's really built for October, but they could be built to win good, games because they have good players. And just see how they play that day and see how many they can get.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of what it's lining up to right now. Cubs are still in position to, while we're recording this anyway, they have a magic number of 13, and all of a sudden it was, instead of the Reds, it's the Giants that we're looking at, and the Giants just swept the Cubs last week. So interestingly enough, that could be 12, depending on what happens. I mean, every time that the Cubs win, they shave that number. They obviously lost. And then every time the Giants lose, then that number gets shaved off. So I know you guys are probably watching this Sunday, and we're recording this on Saturday. So at the point of this show, it's one of those deals where it's 13. But I'm pretty confident. Look, it's 99.9% chance the Cubs are going to make the playoffs. So they're going to make the playoffs as the number one wild card team. I think that's going to happen too, which means they'll host. It'll be a home field advantage. It looks like right now it's going to be the Padres or the Mets. If the Giants come storming in and make it, would you imagine having to play them? But you got to get that. You got to get that number one wild card spot so that you have the games at home. And so, it's important to do that. I think, you want to have them at Wrigley.
Well, I mean, for me, the most important thing is hopefully the last 10, 12 games, the offense really looks like they're fresh and kind of everyone looks healthy and they look like they're on a roll. But, that's fleeting, in this game based on matchups and who they're facing. These teams are out of it. They get the Mets the final week, so they're definitely going to be bringing it, and the Reds are not going to just fold that last series. So we'll see. I think we had a good year, and it could have been a little bit better, but obviously the Brewers got hot. But just where it worked out, it just seems like we're kind of in the coasting mode. I'm really this is probably a different show, but I really hate September baseball. I just think there's too many meaningless games and too many out of it teams. I think they should consider creating a flex schedule or something like that the last 10 days or 2 weeks or something like that. I mean, that would be way more exciting for Major League Baseball. And then you could really, go up against the NFL, which I think the first few weeks are not that entertaining either. So, and then they can go to a best of 7 and all that stuff for the playoffs, which I think would be better. A true reflection of who's the best team than these short series. But yeah, I mean, that's just the way it's playing out. And we'll see. We'll see how everything gets lined up. Who's got Horton? I always kind of was wondering, but Horton is really now like an X factor for October.
Right.
I mean, he, with him and Hassad and Soroka, if he comes back looking fresh, there could be an interesting sequencing of how they use that. And maybe you only need 3 runs to win those games because, they've got a couple hot pitchers, but that'll be really interesting with those 3 guys. I mean, Horton, Boyd, and Imanaga, and then Tyone's coming back too. So they could be a fresh an advantage pitching staff in October. But again, to predict it is almost impossible. It's can we get hot the last week or two and then roll that right in?
I feel good about the starting pitching. I just feel like the offense is just so inconsistent.
Yeah, and then the offense might be one of those things where if Tucker's looking good, he might be just get hot, and then this offense is totally different when he's hot.
Yeah, so, I wish they would just.
I love Nico in the playoffs. I love those guys. I think they're going to be good in the playoffs. Hap in the playoffs, I think, would be a good player. I think he'll grind a lot of at bats. I like the bench a little bit better than I did before, and it's going to be a clean slate. So it's not like that's where the experienced guys matter in October. And then there's weird things with off days. In the NLDS, there's an extra off day for the NL. So you're going to have fresh bullpens. So we'll see.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. Well, let's talk about one other thing before we end the show today. And I want to remind you guys about, let me throw it up on the screen. Our AveD site. Yeah, we're in AveD. Mick Nation. Go on there, pick some Cubs games. We're going to give away tickets and other stuff there. It's easy to use, play around with it a little bit, but it's all free. And you just use that QR code to get there, and we'll all hang out there, pick games, anything I'm involved in. I just throw it in there, so it's a lot of fun. Last thing, Cubs Hall of Fame. A lot of people weren't sure that it would ever happen, that Sammy Sosa would be back. Derrek Lee, he's the last Cub to win a batting title. And both of those guys are going into the Cubs Hall of Fame. And I think that's great. I love that the Cubs are doing a Hall of Fame. I hope that eventually they put Jody Davis in, because I think he belongs in the Hall of Fame. He's a good friend. I think that Sammy should have been in earlier, but obviously you got all the stuff, all the baggage, but I think all of that's kind of under the bridge now. Been great seeing those guys at Wrigley. Derrek Lee was there for his birthday. It was cool. And they're probably watching that Cubs offense going, man, we could have scored some runs with this team. Put me in there. But your thoughts on Derrek Lee, 7 seasons with the Cubs, 2 Gold Gloves, a Silver Slugger Award, and then Sammy Sosa, obviously 13 years, played in some playoffs, and Cubs all-time home run leader. Hit more home runs.
Yeah,
than
I mean,
anybody.
so Sammy, like, you can't say enough about what he did as a Cub, because the Cubs were very good when he was, outside of 98 and 03. They weren't very good, and he was the reason to come watch. And the Cubs marketed him like crazy. And I remember there was a game I went to, and like, oh, let's leave. The game's over. We're down. And I go, well, Sosa's going to be up in the next inning, so let's stay. And then he, hits a 3-run homer, and we win that game.
No
there
way.
were a lot of games like that in the late 90s where the Cubs weren't very good, but you stuck around to see Sammy hit a homer, and maybe he hit a couple homers, and they won or lost. It didn't matter to me because I'm a super fan, but it was entertaining. Sammy and what he did in 98, and that was just an epic year. I remember going back to college in 1998 that fall, and just everyone stopping when Sosa came to bat on these 19-inch TVs they had set up in this little common area where McDonald's was in college in Northern Illinois, and everyone stopped, and I was just like loving it, because I'm such a big baseball fan, but not everybody was. So every random person just stopped to see him bat at the middle of the afternoon on a Wednesday or whatever back then. So you can't minimize that. And I remember just everybody just being locked in 98, and then all those years after. And then I remember that homer in against the Marlins, game 1 against Urbina. I was at a bar, and I jumped before everybody else jumped, because I knew it was out of here.
Yeah.
So I just love those. And then Derrek Lee was just amazing. Good player. That 05 season was epic. He was so good. One of the best seasons I've ever seen. And just wish we had won more with them, and all those guys, like that 2008, 7 and 8 team. They were great teams, but they just put up goose eggs in the playoffs. So those are great times, great teams, great players. And I think it's good that the Cubs get those guys in the Hall of Fame, because they were great players for us. And people are just like, depending on your generation, growing up, those are just, I was such a huge fan of, I came up in like an 89 season. So, for me, it was Rhino and Dwight Smith and Jerome Walton and Mark Grace. These guys were just our guys, so many of those guys, like I remember, they weren't good
Sean
teams
Dunston.
at 89, but I remember those teams really.
Mark Grace. I remember those Cubs teams too. Derrek Lee, first Cubs spring training game I got to broadcast. I'm like, did all these like college games and minor league games, and then finally get to do a big league game. And I'm like setting the defense, and it's like Ramos Ramirez at third, and I think it was Fontenot, maybe Terrio at second, Fontenot at shortstop. Derrek Lee was at first, Giovanni Soto behind the plate, like Alfonso Soriano in left. I mean, you're going through and you're like, man, this is a pretty damn good team. I can't even remember what year it was. Probably like,
that was
like
Jim Hendry, those fantasy rotisserie teams.
Yeah. And they were good, and like 7 and 8, like they just got in the playoffs, and Soriano just struck out so much. They just didn't have that one guy to get them going, right? And it takes that one guy that just has a huge series sometimes to get the team going, and take the pressure off of everybody else.
A lot of these players, they're great players, or good to great players, but coming through in like these, these pressure and tight spots. I mean, it's really hard to project because you don't get those many chances. Where it's all on the line and it's down to one pitch or one at bat. I mean, like how you get, there's no way any model could predict that, because you've seen so many October heroes that are just they're not like the stars, right? And that's the beauty of baseball. You don't see that in other sports where the seventh guy off the bench is the star of a playoff. In other sports, it's usually the stars of the stars that come through. But in baseball, it's Derrek Lowe is lights out for the Red Sox, and it's Luis Soho or Craig Counsell getting the big hit against Mariano Rivera. Those guys, you don't see that. It's that's the beauty of baseball. You can't just give it to your star player and let him get
some of the biggest
clear out some of the best player. Can't do that.
Like the White Sox would have won. I think they would have won the World Series in '83 had Tito Landrum not hit that home run against them in Game 4 of the ALCS against Baltimore. And you're going, who's Tito Landrum? And that's the exact point I'm making, guys. And kind of agreeing with what you're saying. It's like, what was it when the Red Sox beat the Yankees? The guy the manager, Dave Roberts, steals second base.
Yeah.
And then they single him in with 2 outs. It keeps the game going, and then he ended up winning. And it's like there's a reason.
Got that tag base in Game 7, and Benzo Benzo is huge, but Miguel Montero got the final game deciding base hit run, and those guys just left-handed hitters, against these right-handed bullpen guys in the playoffs. They just huge advantage. They always get these big hits because of the matchup against those sliders. Against those right-hand relievers. And I think there's a lot to that. You see a lot of left-handed bats getting these big hits in October because of the matchups. There's just not enough lefty relievers that can dominate late in the game. So I just think that's just a huge thing. It's a huge thing in October. And I think that's why you want those bats. That's why the Cubs do match up well in October, because of that reason. They're a little inexperienced, so I think maybe some of these guys are, going to be helpful, but we'll see. They got to get tested. That 3-game series, that could go any way. I mean, look at last year, man. Devin Williams was the guy you want up in that spot, and then Alonso hits that 3-run bomb, and it changes everything.
Matchup today at Wrigley: Andrew Alvarez, 1-0, no earned runs on the year, against Colin Ray, who honestly has had, I think, about as good of a season as Colin Ray's going to have. 10-6 record, a 4.30 ERA. He is what he is, and he's been really consistent. I don't know that you start him in the playoffs. He even gets to touch the ball, but he's just a kind of like a marathon guy, helps you get through it. And then the Cubs will head down to Atlanta on Monday to take the Braves on and just try to trim off that magic number. But anyway, Darren, great to see you again, brother. And you guys, good to see you. Make sure you're part of Mick Nation right there, Avenue D. Hit that QR code and win some stuff. And I want to remind you guys this: next vacation, think about Sevierville.
When you head to the Smoky Mountains, it's only natural to visit Sevierville.
Even we had to check it out.
And we've been here our whole lives.
Experience the adventure of a lifetime.
I'm king of the world.
Even you can get a bird's eye view of the Smokies.
You're going down, Billy. Whoa.
Your Smokies start here.